Hello and welcome to the ADHD with Jenna podcast. Today we are talking about the two different approaches you can take when working on ADHD and making it better. We have the Band-Aid approach, and I was calling it the surgery approach, but someone said that kind of sounds like a lobotomy, so we're not going to say that. I'll say the transformation approach, right? The little quick fixes versus the actual true big long-term change approach. And then we also are going to talk about information versus implementation. Something we can get really stuck in as ADHDers is information collecting, if you will. Like, oh my gosh, I need to know more. I need to know more. I need to know more. And we're going to talk about why that keeps us stuck and why we do that and what we can do instead. Today's episode is brought to you by the new and improved ADHD guide that I have available for you. I have changed it a little bit, and we are going to be talking about the 3 types of regulation you need in order to get out of all of the symptoms you're dealing with, in order to be more productive, less stressed, and have more enjoyability in your life. So be sure to check that out in the show notes, and we'll dive right in. All right, so there are 2 approaches you can take when working on ADHD. When you're trying to make your symptoms better, you're looking for a solution, what are the 2 different types? So the first is the Band-Aid approach. And I don't say this to dismiss it, because sometimes we need a Band-Aid, right? If you have a cut, you need a Band-Aid. So it's not that there's no place for Band-Aids, but if we are really struggling, and most of you listening are going to be struggling enough that you're seeking help, right? Seeking learning and support. So if we use a Band-Aid for something big, something that we're struggling with, it's not going to be very effective, right? Or you need to keep putting new Band-Aids on. So for example, buying those, that next calendar that's going to be the solution, that next notebook that's going to help you, that timer, that app, that physical item. How is that going to help if you've tried the 50 before it and those didn't help? Not going to say that it's useless, right? I still have on the video showing my calendar, I have a very strong calendar practice, if you will. I find that tool, that Band-Aid for my symptoms, to be so, so helpful. But the problem with the Band-Aid approach, just trying to find that external quick fix, that tip, trick, hack, or external tool to better your ADHD symptoms. The problem there is that if you are dysregulated, if you're in survival mode, the Band-Aids work even less effectively. So when I was dysregulated, I couldn't keep up with the calendar. And now that I'm more regulated, the Band-Aid tool, the external tool that I'm using, is truly helpful because I'm not in survival mode. When you're in survival mode, we are just, flying by the seat of our pants. We're in reaction mode. We're not able to sit methodically, thoughtfully, and intentionally to even use a calendar. I really want you to think right now, because for a lot of ADHDers, using a calendar is a struggle consistently. And I use one every single workday for everything I do, and I quite frankly do not know how an ADHDer is surviving without a good calendar system you are using, because it's so helpful to me. And I know if you're like, well, I don't use one, there's no shame in that, but damn, you're doing pretty good, because that's really hard to keep track of everything without it. But I'm able to use it every single day because I am regulated. I'm calm, I'm present, I'm not in a rush. When you are dysregulated, that calendar you keep trying to use, it's not that you're, can't plan, can't prioritize, aren't smart. Like, you are smart enough to use a calendar. It's ridiculous to say otherwise. But really look at, is it because I don't have time for that? I have so much going on that it slips my mind, and I'm in such a rush. I'm in reactivity all day that I don't have a quiet moment to think, oh yeah, let me check my calendar. What was I going to do this afternoon? There's no slowing down. There's no moment to be mindful to think about it. That's the problem with the calendar for us. Not that we're not good at it, not that we can't do it, and not that it's not going to be helpful in the future. But this is why the Band-Aid approach, Band-Aids for ADHD, yes, are helpful. But even if you're going to take that approach or using Band-Aids, for those little external tools that are putting a patch on one of our struggles, you are also going to want to do the transformational approach though with it if you want those Band-Aids to be more effective. So really want you to think next time you're struggling with a tool, a strategy, a timer, an app that you got for your ADHD, Really sit with it. And this is even a regulated way to do it, right? If you're dysregulated, you don't sit with it. But take a minute and go, what is that about? Why am I not using it? Is it because I'm, not smart enough to use it? And I feel like that's the narrative. Like, we just can't use a calendar. No, you can. But if you are in dysregulation, if you are in a rush so much of the time that you don't spend time with it, you don't look at it because you don't have time in your mind, no, it's not going to be effective. And then we get frustrated and we think, look, I can't do it. It's not working. And then we throw, all or nothing thinking, throw the baby out with the bathwater if we haven't used it perfectly. And that is just regulation as well. So the transformational approach is different than the Band-Aid approach. Again, not saying you're not going to use both, but the transformational approach is understanding, there's internal work to be done. There's probably some learning to do. It's not going to happen overnight. We're going to have to build up awareness, and then we're going to have to build up some practices, and then I'm going to have to start doing things differently. It's slower, and when we're dysregulated and in a rush all the time, slower feels dangerous. Literally, to your system. To slow down and go, hey, we don't need to find that quick tip, trick, hack that's going to solve all our problems today. We are safe to slow down and learn about this. And I mean learn about this as in sit down, even listening to this podcast is learning about a philosophy without listening to something and hoarding information about try this, try this, try this. So it's learning, but it's more wrapping your head around a different way to tackle life, which takes time. And then when you have an awareness, we need to implement it. Transformation comes with a lot more implementation. Band-Aid approach, yes, there might be a purchase of a product and then you use it, but there's not much practice that needs to go into it, right? You just do it. But clearly, actually, we might need practice with the calendar and things like that. But the transformational approach really means internal work, understanding, there's lots of work I can do inside myself without needing to add anything new on the outside. And so obviously that's the approach that I take, because unless you're working on transformation and real change internally, again, Band-Aids are just going to peel right off, if you will. You're going to keep putting that Band-Aid on. It's just going to keep falling off. But when we do the transformational work, that inner work, in this world of ours, of course, we're focusing on regulation, the 3 different types of regulation, mental regulation, right, in our thinking. We have our nervous system regulation, and then regulating our actions, which in that new guide, I do break that down more. It's just a different way to think about it. But when we work on all those types of regulation, you are then going to be able to use your Band-Aids effectively. Win-win, right? So if you are like, no, I really love calendars. These tools are so helpful for me. That's amazing. That's amazing. And if they were enough, you probably wouldn't be here. And or if you've had them and they help a little bit, they help for a couple weeks and then you kind of fall off the wagon, if you will, with these tools, just know, that could get better with the transformational work. So let's put the 2 together. Okay. Sometimes we're seeking the Band-Aid approach even when we don't realize it, because when we're dysregulated, we are in such a rush that we want the answers and we want them now. And anything where we want the answer now is going to be a Band-Aid, right? Like you're listening to a half-hour podcast every week and probably still wrapping your head around some of this stuff and still hopefully practicing little things here and there and just learning about a different way of thinking. That takes time. If you don't have time for a podcast, which sometimes when I post, this is why this conversation was brought up. I posted something recently and someone's like, I love the part where you tell us how to do it. If you think I can explain an entirely counterculture philosophy that ADHD symptoms are actually because of dysregulation and being in survival mode, like the worst of it is from that, explaining why that affects your ADHD symptoms, explaining why regulation would help, and how to effectively regulate in 3 different areas in a 1-minute video, like you don't really want to know. You just want to get it done, right? You want to get it over with and you're seeking a Band-Aid. So that person is dysregulated, I can tell you right now, because they're unwilling even to go to say, click over to the podcast and listen. It's like, no, I don't have time to click over to the podcast and listen. Tell me in this 1-minute video. That is a Band-Aid approach. That is a dysregulated approach dealing with ADHD, and I don't blame them for it, because when you're dysregulated, a lot of the times we don't have the awareness that we're doing that, right? We just feel so desperate and in such a rush. Oh my God, I need the solution and I need it right this second. So if you don't tell me in this 1 minute video, you suck and I don't have time for this. I get that. I really do. But we need to start being aware of that in order to change. So some little signs like what I just talked about, that you're looking for Band-Aids, even if you don't realize it. One, looking for the solution in one video. If you think one TikTok video is going to give you the solution to your ADHD issues, we're dreaming. Okay. The 1 minute video is only ever going to give you, it may give you an insight. And that's what most of my videos are, more like an awareness or an aha moment or an insight, but it's not necessarily giving you the whole solution, right? Because that would be way too long. If you don't have time to hear about a philosophy, right? It's like, oh, I have no time to hear about any background information. Just get to the point. Even in some of my 1 minute videos, people are like, this is too long, get to the point. We're dysregulated. If you cannot hear 2 sentences of context to what the point is talking about, we know, oh, I'm in too much of a rush. I'm so dysregulated that I can't absorb the information that's being shared. And that's just something we can be aware of. Third thing is, if you're really on the train purchasing things, physical products to help with your ADHD. Again, a calendar, a timer, here and there, totally cool. But if you notice, wow, I'm really in a like money spending, which is a dysregulated behavior. When it's money you don't want to be spending, feels compulsive, consuming pattern to try to help my ADHD. That's very much a Band-Aid, right? I'm seeking this physical thing to heal me, right? I'm slapping this Band-Aid on. And if it's endless. I just buy thing after thing after thing to try to cope with my ADHD. I really encourage you, take a deep breath, get regulated about that, right? Come back down to earth, which I say that absolutely lovingly, because that's what dysregulation is, right? It's like, I am disconnected from my body. I'm disconnected from the present moment. I do not have my feet firmly on the ground. In reality, I am just keeping my head above water and reacting and really lost in our heads. When we're dysregulated, we're really living in our heads and not in our bodies and in our surroundings. So if you really find you're on that purchasing train, or even money spending, even if it's not about ADHD, but just like stuff is going to help fix any problem I have. Really take a deep breath about that and just notice the urgency the next time you go to purchase something for your ADHD or otherwise, and just think, can I slow down even my internal experience right now? Okay. Slow down the thinking. We can interrupt our thinking. It might be, slow down. You might have to say that to yourself out loud, because I could, you go to buy something. Okay, if I get this timer, then that'll help me with this. And then this will do that. Okay. Do I really need this? And I'm saying for the people who are like, oh my God, this is out of control. I'm just buying 10 million things. They're all in my drawer and I haven't used any of them. So that's something you can consider. And then the focus on the external. If you have spent more time focusing on the products and the external tools and tricks than you have on your internal experience and awareness, we're going more Band-Aid than transformation. And I think probably the best equation would be 75% of your time is spent on transformation, meaning the internal work. So example, learning about this philosophy we talk about here with the ADHD reset and regulation work. And then 25% Band-Aids. What calendar would work best for me? Things like that. That would probably be a pretty good ratio to keep you regulated, but helped, right? We need that scaffolding of the tools. I totally get that. So the next thing I wanted to discuss was information versus implementation. As dysregulated ADHDers, we can really get stuck in information overload, meaning I am not really doing anything. And when I learn stuff, I don't really do anything with it, but I'm on a constant hunt for learning. This can be very similar to the constant hunt for external tools and purchasing a bunch of things. But it's okay, I'm, going down a rabbit hole on TikTok about ADHD and learning all these tips and tricks. And I've saved 1,000 different posts. Okay, but have we done anything with any of them? I've read 5 ADHD books. That's awesome. And what are you doing about it, right? ADHD learning only goes so far. So I did say, I totally get that we might need to learn, for example, this philosophy. We need to understand it to understand what we're trying to do with it. But there is a line we cross where we're going into almost hoarding mentality. So what is happening there, just like someone who hoards physically, and I say this completely with non-judgment, what's happening there is I don't feel safe. I am dysregulated. I need all these physical things around me to feel safe. Well, information hoarding or digital hoarding, often for ADHDers, is like I have 30,000 screenshots. All I do is keep asking for book recommendations and maybe listening to them or reading them, but I don't really do anything about it. Now I'm just on to the next book. Or, social media. I talk to a lot of ADHDers about social media use. And one kind of rebuttal that comes up when I'm kind of saying we got to challenge our use of social media because it's not good for our brains, especially when we're doom scrolling. And they say, yeah, but like I've learned so much from it. I found you on, Instagram, or it allowed me to get an ADHD diagnosis. I got a lot of benefit from it, and I get that. But just because something did one good thing for you doesn't mean it's not hurting you now. So we really want to look. Yeah, maybe that first 5 things you learned were helpful, but now that you're on the 59th thing you're learning, is it starting to hurt you? So when you are, even on this podcast, I know you're here to learn, and I love that for you. I want you to keep going with this podcast. But if you are just listening to this to make yourself feel better, like, oh, look at me, I'm trying, but then not even thinking about this kind of stuff throughout the week, what good is it doing? And I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot there, except saying, don't listen to me, but do keep listening. That sometimes is enough, especially when we're talking more about like insights, perspective, thinking in a new way. So hopefully you take these little nuggets with you throughout the week and you kind of see things in a new way as you go into your life. But if listening to this podcast only remains in this half an hour we're together and you don't think about this outside of it, and you're not aware of your behavior in a different way, and you're not trying things in a different way, like even practicing slowing down or observing when you're not present, stuff like that, it does come to a point where it's useless. It's a waste of time. Again, hopefully you would go into like, oh, let me sure I'm implementing, not let me just not listen ever again. But that is something you can consider. Am I in this kind of information hoarding habit? Learn. When are we going to do? And I get that that's kind of our struggle, right? They say ADHD is not an information problem or an intelligence problem or knowledge problem. It is an execution problem. Why? Because we are dysregulated. That piece really gets easier when you are more regulated. You will be able to execute a lot of more things. So you are much better off learning one little tidbit or one, insight, one aha moment, and then running with that for a while. So even on this podcast, just this episode, this is helpful to listen to only if later today and throughout the week, you're observing your behavior. You're observing yourself and building awareness of, I see, look at, I've saved like 10 posts today about ADHD tips. Well, wait, did the other 50 I've saved, have I ever looked at those? Let me observe my information hoarding behavior here. Check in with yourself. Maybe it's, you know what, I'm going to stop saving all of these tips. Maybe you're still going to watch it, right? It can be balanced. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But I'm going to stop saving all these because all that's doing is making me feel better. It's not actually helping, right? And by making you feel better, I mean it's soothing your dysregulation. When you are doing that and you're like, okay, I'm going to save this and save this and save that, you are soothing dysregulation. You feel safer, just like the person who's physically hoarding that has all the products and the stuff around them. It's like, oh, feels better for a second, right? But of course, in the end, they're not happy. They don't want that, and we don't want that either. I don't want a phone that has no data left on it because it has all this stuff that I feel I need to be safe, even though I'm not using it, right? It's illogical. When our behavior is illogical, meaning that makes no sense. It makes no sense to save 30,000 screenshots that I'm never going to look at. Not in a shame blame way. Remember, there's never room for that in this work, but we can go, isn't that interesting? Curiosity over judgment. We don't want to judge what we do. We don't want to judge the behavior. We want to look at it with curiosity. Isn't that interesting that I have so many screenshots about all the things I want to do, the things I want to buy, the ADHD tips. Let me think, like I really never went and looked at them and utilized them. Or maybe I did one out of 30,000. I always say 30,000 because I did a poll and that was like the most common number of people, how many screenshots they had on their phone. It tells us something, right? I'm in my like safety hoarding energy here. The reason it's so important to identify that is because it's keeping you stuck. When we are, say on TikTok and saving all these posts or screenshotting a bunch of stuff, that placates our struggle just enough to not actually implement anything. It's like, okay, well, I'm feeling really worried. I'm so dysregulated. I'm really struggling. Oh, I screenshotted those 5 things. That's going to help me. That feels better. But they sit in your photos. You don't do anything with them. They're not actually making anything better. It's just soothing your concern and soothing the dysregulation. That keeps us stuck. It just makes you comfortable enough to not go make change. And you can get stuck there for literally decades. So we really want to be aware of it so that you can start realizing what's happening and going, okay, I am just collecting information. I literally haven't done anything with it for 6 months. Since I got my diagnosis, I've done nothing with all this stuff I've saved. Yes, maybe you bought a few calendars, maybe you bought a few tools, but really look at all the information you've been taking in and are you utilizing it? Yes, if you read a book and then you get a few really big ahas from it and now it's changed how you act and what you do, that's great. That's enough. You don't have to take every single tiny thing from every book you read. That's unrealistic, but just observe. Am I taking it all in to make myself feel better? Or is actual change happening here? Because I know you want actual change, right? You wouldn't be here listening to me ramble on about this if you didn't want to make change. So that's what we want to take away from today, is observing in the coming week and building awareness. How much am I looking for a Band-Aid fix here? Am I in a rush? Am I, are you even frustrated with this episode? Because it's like, oh my God, get to the point, hurry up, get it over with. Ooh, okay. So am I taking a Band-Aid approach where I'm in a rush, desperate to find a solution that's going to heal everything today? Or am I able to take the insights in? Am I able to just build a little bit of awareness and have that be enough and understand that this is going to be a journey? Because in order to transform, which is what we're going for, it takes time, right? Transformation doesn't happen overnight. So we want to observe that. And then we also want to observe, is the information I'm taking in information I'm using, or is it information I am taking in just to make myself feel better, just to make myself feel more regulated? Okay. So as you move forward, I did want to share a little shift just in the way I've been explaining regulation, because I've become more and more aware of my language online and how I talk about this work. And I think it's so important that I'm crystal clear in what I'm talking about and what I mean when I talk about regulation. So if you're interested in understanding this philosophy a little more, I'm just going to share this for a few minutes. So the first is the word regulation. I use that word a lot because it is the foundation of what I do and how we can work on your ADHD. But one, people think I mean emotional regulation. I don't mean that, right? People always message me, oh yeah, I totally agree. I think emotional dysregulation is my problem. I'm like, I never said emotional dysregulation, but I get it because that's what a lot of other ADHDers talk about and other ADHD coaches talk about. I'm not talking about emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is the inability to regulate your emotions. But why do we have the inability to regulate our emotions? Because we're dysregulated. We're in survival mode. It has nothing to do about the emotions, right? That's just the thing that shows up. That's the symptom. That's not the cause. So I am not talking about emotional dysregulation. The other thing that comes up for people when I say regulation is nervous system regulation. They assume I mean nervous system regulation only, and they think, well, I've done that. I've tried that. Didn't work. I've done somatic exercises. I've done this. I've done that. Didn't work. Okay, moving on. I don't mean either of those things. By regulation, what I really mean is 3 areas of regulation that need to come together to create a way of being that is different enough and challenges what we've been stuck in enough to get us out of survival mode. Nervous system regulation is not enough. I have found that. If you are only dealing with your body, then your actions and your thoughts are going to derail that. They're going to put you back in dysregulation. So this is why it's all three areas. So moving forward, I'm going to be using the language of the ADHD reset more, which is these three areas of regulation, so that people can go, well, wait, what is that? And have more of an understanding of what I'm talking about. So the three types of regulation I'm talking about when I say regulation, and now when I say the ADHD reset, which is this approach, one, nervous system regulation's in there, okay? That's a part of it, for sure. Your biology needs to be on board with the fact that you are safe. There's no bear chasing you. You're okay. There's no rush. Everything's fine physically. So that is a part of it. But without the other two, it's not strong enough to do what we want it to do. The second is thought and belief regulation, meaning how am I thinking in a dysregulated way? What beliefs do I hold? And some of my most popular posts are when I say like, hey, we believe I'm behind, I need to catch up. There's not enough time in the day. All of these thoughts that are, oh no, right, puts you right back into dysregulation. So yes, you might regulate your nervous system, maybe do some deep breaths, you physically slow down. Oh, that's great. But then your brain goes, yeah, but we're behind, we need to catch up. Nervous system triggered right back into dysregulation. That's why we have to work on both. Then the third is behavior regulation. I don't love that word for it. So if anyone has another word I could call that one, please let me know. Or like actions regulation, like regulating how we act, because a lot of what we do in our behavior and our patterns come from dysregulation. It's rooted in the fact that we're in survival mode. Like all or nothing, right? I'm either doing everything perfectly or I'm not doing it at all. That behavior is because of dysregulation. So we need to be aware of it and then we can work on it. Procrastination, that is because of dysregulation. That is behavior that is rooted in the fact that you're in survival mode. Even paralysis, even the act of being in paralysis is like, oh, I see what's happening here. And I'm not saying we have control over behavior all the time, but we need to be aware of how our behavior and actions are tied into dysregulation so that we can work on all of it together. Because once your thoughts and your nervous system are more regulated, it is much easier to work on our behavior, right? I wouldn't say go straight for behavior regulation and try to do things differently without regulating your thoughts and your nervous system. But it's like a nice little triangle, all three. We need to be aware of and continuously working on all three areas. Gently, not intensely, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but this is what I'm talking about when I say regulation. So as you move forward, just consider that. If you say you're taking deep breaths or say you're slowing down, and hopefully even that will create a little glimmer for you of like, ooh, that's providing a little relief. I'm sure it won't solve all your problems, but you may be seeing a little bit of, I see what Jen is talking about. But just know there's more to it than that. We're going to dive into doing more than just the nervous system regulation work. It's important, but it is not enough. So as we move forward, observe what we talked about today in your ADHD coping, strategies, and we will go from there. We really can identify dysregulation in every area of our lives, including how we're dealing with ADHD even, right? So that's why I love, the reset, the ADHD regulation work, because it is touching everything. It gets its grubby little fingers in everything, and we can make it better. It can make your relationships better, work better, home life better, internal experience better. Honestly, that's my favorite one. I want to enjoy my damn life, and this work allows us to do that, and you deserve it too. So thank you so much. Please, if you feel anyone's kind of been in the information seeking mode and you think this would be insightful for them, please share the podcast. As the best way for it to grow and find new ADHDers in this philosophy. Or even if you're like, oh, I have a friend that has ADHD, they might be interested in this philosophy, you can share the first episode as well. But thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week and we'll keep going from there. Bye.